Credit card point redemptions are such an integral part of the credit card game, but there are so many different ways you can use your points that it sometimes becomes overwhelming. As somebody who travels mostly domestically as well as on a budget, I feel like my redemptions are ones that more closely align with the general public, which I am, compared to those aspirational 15 cent per point international redemptions that you may have heard about. I'd rather see y'all strategically using your points in whatever way best suits your needs and helps you to pay less cash than you would have without credit card points. If you're just able to use your credit card points to give you and your loved ones just better experiences overall, that's really all I care about. So in making videos like this one, I just hope to show y'all that you don't need to get super high value for every single one of your redemptions in order for that redemption to have a lot of intrinsic value to you. Now for this trip in particular, this is one that I took to West Palm Beach a month or two back, where I went to visit a couple of my creator friends and film some creator conversations episodes with them, which you might have seen with Chad's Money Minutes and CJ. And in this video, I basically just want to break down exactly how I use my credit card points to help me travel for very close to free, at least for the hotels and the airfare, using my Chase points for the flights and using my Marriott points for the hotel. Plus, I want to discuss my experience booking my first ever rental car, and this one was through the Capital One travel portal using my Capital One Venture X, which gives me Hertz Presidents Circle status. And then lastly, I'll talk about a rough outline of what actually happened on that trip for those of y'all that care to know a little bit more about the behind the scenes action. But now let's dive into those numbers, starting with the flights. So whenever I made this booking, this was before I had the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which y'all might have seen me make a video about, me upgrading my Chase Sapphire Preferred to the Reserve recently. So as always, my first place to go, being in Austin, Texas, is to check Southwest prices. Originally, I thought about flying into the Palm Beach International Airport, but the prices out of that airport compared to the Fort Lauderdale airport were just astronomically high. So instead, I decided to book my flights from Austin to Fort Lauderdale's airport and then obviously back to Austin after that. In order to make this happen though, I again didn't want to pay cash, so I used my Chase points transferred over to Southwest to make the booking. As for the departing flight, as you can see here, the cash price of that flight was $234 and the points cost of that flight was 16,916 points. Funny enough, the returning flight was exactly the same, cash price of $234 with a points cost of 16,916 points. So in total for that round trip ticket, in cash with taxes and fees included, it would have cost me $467.97. But then with points on the other hand, it would have only cost me 33,832 points plus $11.20 in taxes and fees. So in order to calculate our cent per point value for this redemption, we're going to take the total cash price of the booking, subtract out the taxes and fees that I would pay by paying in points, and then dividing by the total points cost, multiplying by 100, and that gives us our cent per point value. So in this case, we take $467.97, subtract out $11.20, and divide by 33,832 points, multiply by 100, and we get a cent per point value of 1.35 cents per point. So obviously not a very high cent per point value here, but considering at that point I was only using my Chase points for Hyatt bookings or for Southwest domestic flights, and I was trying to pay as little cash as possible for this trip, this redemption made sense for me personally. Again though, keep in mind that this was a redemption that I made while I still had the Chase Sapphire Preferred and not the Reserve, so the floor value of my Chase points back then was 1.25 cents per point, which obviously I got better than here, but my floor value for Chase points now should technically be 1.5 cents per point with the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and that is because of the boost that it gives you through their travel portal. So how I go to book my flights in the future theoretically is going to actually drastically change. And who knows, maybe I'll even start utilizing airline alliances to book domestic flights using international travel partners, but don't worry, more to come on that for sure. Okay, and now for the hotel. At this point, I was running pretty low on Chase points, but I did just recently apply for the Marriott Bonvoy Boundless credit card and had a lot of points on that card from referrals and stuff, thanks to you guys. So I did have some of those points that I wanted to burn. Now, in talking with Chad and CJ about, possibly where I should stay in that area, Chad had mentioned a property that he had stayed at in downtown West Palm Beach that he enjoyed whenever he stayed there for work. So instead of doing too much research, I saw that one made sense for me and decided to book it. Now that hotel was the Residence Inn West Palm Beach downtown, and I booked that hotel for 2 nights. Now the one important thing to note about the room that I needed in doing my research of the hotel was that I needed a room big enough to actually film in. So theoretically I wanted one with a couch, and luckily Residence Inn had not only, a big room, but they had a sofa couch as well, which actually worked out perfectly for where me and Chad filmed our Creator Conversations episode. And if you've seen that on the channel, channel, then that's the exact couch I'm talking about. So like I said before, I'm using Marriott points for this booking, and I'm not going to be using any kind of free night certificates that I had from the welcome bonus. With the welcome offer that I applied for, I got 5 free nights worth up to 50K points each. But for this specific hotel, the points cost, I believe, was 36,000 points per night, meaning that if I use those certificates, I'd be giving up 28,000 points in value over the course of the 2 nights. So that's why I didn't want to use those certificates. I'd rather max out those values that I get from those certificates by staying at a 50K point per night room. But getting into the numbers here, if I was to have booked this hotel in cash, it would have cost me $266.50 per night, plus $68.29 in taxes and fees, coming out to a total of $602.29 for the 2 nights. Using points, on the other hand, it would have cost me 36,000 points per night, or 72,000 points total. Going back to our cent per point calculation here, if you put $602.29 up top, subtract out the taxes and fees in using points, which in this case there are none of because I'm booking a hotel, and specifically a hotel with Marriott. I guess not every hotel maybe covers your taxes and fees, but for this specific situation they did. So the top of that fraction is just the $602.29, and then we divide that by 72,000 points, multiply by 100, and get a final cent per point value of 0.84 cents per point. The only other thing I had to pay for with this hotel in particular was valet parking, which was kind of annoying, but I had a rental car that we're going to talk about here in a second, and it was downtown West Palm Beach, which there's just like no parking in general. And I'm not sure how much that actually ended up costing me, but it was less than $50 a night, if I remember correctly. So I guess there was some cash I needed to use to actually book this hotel. But of course, that doesn't go into our cent per point calculation of the room rate. Also, one interesting thing about this hotel stay is that I had a Marriott Bonvoy Boundless credit card, and I wanted to make sure I got all the perks possible that I could out of that card. And the one thing that they did when I checked in is they actually gave me a little goodie bag, which I think is because I had the card. I don't know if they gave those to everybody, but it was kind of cool to get to see them do that. And I think I took pictures, so maybe I can throw that up on screen. And the other thing that's cool with the Boundless card that they actually let me know at the counter when I checked out is that I was able to get the free enhanced Wi-Fi. Now you might be like, yeah, I know that's not a big deal. That's what the card advertises itself as having. But what I didn't know is that that perk doesn't come with Marriott Silver Elite status. And it actually is only granted to you with Silver Elite status if you have the Marriott Bonvoy Boundless credit card, or one of the other credit cards, I believe. So there's some free value there, which was pretty nice because I was uploading massive video files and that helped a lot. But overall, that was a 0.84 cent per point valuation of Marriott points, which is actually exactly in line with what the points guy would tell you those points are worth. Was that a great redemption value? Obviously not. But did it help me not pay cash? Yes, it did. Now, at this point, if you've been watching my channel for a while, then you know that I have a lot of different credit cards from a lot of different lenders and therefore have a lot of point ecosystems I have to keep up with. So how do I do this, you may ask? Well, I use an app called Max Rewards. Max Rewards is an app that I've personally been using for over 2 years at this point, and I love many of its features, but the one that I want to focus in on today is very specific to this video. So to get to this little tool that I find so helpful, you're going to want to go to your home page, of course, and then click on Account up top. And then once you're there, you can click into Rewards in the middle of the screen. And then at that point, you're going to be directed to this screen that shows you your point valuation for each of the lenders that you have cards from. Now, as you can probably see at a quick glance, some of the points value here may not be exactly what you would expect for most of these lenders, and that's because I'm able to manually update those depending on what cards I have and how much I value those points. So as you can see here, for me and my Chase points, I value those at roughly 2 cents per point based on how I redeem using Hyatt's mostly. My City Thank You points are only at 1 cent per point because I don't have the City Premier card that allows me to transfer out to their partners, so I'm stuck with 1 cent per point with them. My Amex membership rewards points are at 2 cents per point, similar to my Chase points because of the ways that I use those points with transfer partners. But like I said, the cool thing about this is that I can change these valuations either depending on my current travel habits or what have you to accurately reflect my actual value of those points in my app. Now, this is obviously just one very small feature that Max Rewards offers, but it has a ton of other things that you can go and test out yourself as well by downloading the app through the link in my description. And during the sign up process, if you use the promo code Spencer, you'll get a 1-month discount of Max Rewards Gold off of your yearly subscription. And that allows you to do things like automatically activate your quarterly rotating categories for you on your cards like your Chase Freedom Flex, and also activate your credit card offers for you, which can also be extremely beneficial. Thank you to Max Rewards for sponsoring this video, but let's get into this redemption a little bit further. Okay, now let's go ahead and dive into the rental car situation. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I knew that my Capital One Venture X gave me Hertz Presidents Circle status. So before I booked this trip and all of that, I went ahead and signed up for that to make sure that it would be, reflected for this trip. But of course, since I had that status, Hertz was the first place that I looked. I know that Hertz Presidents Circle does status match to other rental car companies as well, but I didn't want to go through that hassle within, a few days of booking. So I just decided to go straight with Hertz, especially considering too that they were on the cheaper end for that stay. So initially I was, very worried about how I was going to book this rental car, because I assumed that if I booked through Capital One's travel portal to get the 10x back on those car rental purchases, that they might not honor my Hertz Presidents Circle status when I actually got to the counter. Because for a lot of things, specifically flights and hotels, if you book those through the portal, then usually your status is not honored. But after reading a few data points on Reddit, I was pretty confident that they would actually honor my status even if I booked through Capital One's travel portal. So I decided to just do it and share my experience with y'all. One other thing I read in those data points though was that in general, whenever you come to the counter to pick up your rental car, a lot of times they only see that you have the gold member status or whatever with Hertz. So you have to remind them at the actual counter once you get there that you are Hertz Presidents Circle and, maybe show proof of that. And that's exactly what happened to me. I got there and I asked him, I was like, hey, do you see that I'm Hertz Presidents Circle on your end? And he was like, no, it just shows that you're a gold member. And I was like, oh, well, I am Presidents Circle status. Like I have the card here that gives me that. And he's like, yeah, if you can just show me on your app, then we'll honor it. So that's exactly what I ended up doing. And I was able to get my Hertz Presidents Circle status honored on my first ever rental car booking, despite booking through Capital One's travel portal. So not only did I get the status, but I also got 10x back on that purchase. And that's another reason I also didn't want to pay for the rental car in points, because I wanted that 10x back. Granted, you could use the purchase eraser with Capital One's points, I believe, for that purchase. But for now, I'm going to save those points for some later redemptions. Okay, that was a lot before even telling y'all any numbers, but basically what I ended up doing was, like I said, booking my rental car with Hertz through Capital One's travel portal, and I picked it up at Fort Lauderdale's airport. And one tip for y'all too that worked for me is I booked the cheapest possible car I could, because whenever you get to the counter and you have Hertz Presidents Circle status, they'll let you choose from any car you want. So I ended up booking like a mid-size SUV or something. I think it'll be on screen right now. And the cost of that one was $153.71. One other thing that's annoying because I'm under 25 is that I had to pay an additional like $40 for being under 25, but that was paid at the counter when I got there. And that's when I used my Venture X card again to make sure that my Presidents Circle status was still honored. And I guess y'all probably want to know what kind of car I was able to get by booking with Hertz Presidents Circle. And kind of annoyingly, when I got there were only like 3 cars left in the whole lot, but I also didn't land until like 10:30 p.m. or something like that. So pretty understandable. And by 3 cars left in the whole lot, I mean in the Presidents Circle section of the lot. 2 of them were like mid-size SUVs, like, family cars that I felt kind of weird driving in with just one person. And while I was out there, one person went and took one of the family cars and I had jumped into the other one, but I saw a family coming out of the airport looking for a car and I was like, hey, y'all take this one. And I decided to take a Camaro instead. I don't drive low to the ground cars. I drive a 4Runner, as y'all know, but I was like, when in Florida, I guess, might as well pick up a Camaro. So that's what I drove around for the whole weekend, which was actually a lot of fun. Okay, with that all being said, let's now get into the combined calculations for this entire trip. If I was to have booked everything in cash, and we're not including the rental car here, just the hotels and flights, it would have cost me $1,070.26. But instead, I opted to use 33,832 Chase points and 72,000 Marriott points. As I mentioned earlier, the cent per point value I got for my Chase points was 1.35 cents per point. So obviously not too high. And for my Marriott points, I got basically the average of 0.84 cents per point. With these points, I would generally recommend trying to get higher values than I did, especially with Chase in particular. But just keep in mind that for one, I am a credit card YouTuber, so points for me are much easier to come by than, the normal person who's just getting points from spending. But 2, that lower cent per point values are not a bad thing, like I said earlier. You just want to make sure you're utilizing your points for your specific travel habits and don't just always sit on your points for some unforeseen trip that's going to come up in 10 years. Just strategically use your points to your advantage. But say, for example, with Chase points, you're on average getting much less than 2 cents per point. You will want to taper back your personal value of Chase points. That way you're not overinflating the estimated value you have for those points in your head. Oh, and also can't forget that I did have to pay roughly $200 for the rental car. So that does go into these final calculations here. Like I said before, technically, I think I could go back in time and wipe away that transaction with Capital One miles. And since I also booked with my Capital One Venture X in the first place, I would have also gotten that 10x back and then would have been able to wipe it. So that's like kind of double dipping there, which is a good strategy to implement. But that redemption would have been for only 1 cent per point. And like I said, I want to save those Capital One miles for the ability to possibly book all of my domestic flights next year using international travel partners. So like I said, more videos on that to come. Now, for those of y'all that really care about the actual experience that I had in West Palm Beach, let me go ahead and tell y'all about that now. So I arrived in the Fort Lauderdale airport on Friday night, and it was pretty late, like I said, I think like 10:30 p.m. or something like that. And the first thing I did was go to the Hertz rental car counter to pick up my first ever rental car, which was a pretty cool experience. I already told y'all about the actual car I got, but like I said, pretty fun to be able to pick up a Camaro for the same price as, you know, the cheapest car that Hertz offered. But in that super nice Camaro, the first stop that I had to make on the way to the hotel was at Taco Bell. I hadn't eaten any dinner yet, and that was one of the only things open, so don't judge me. It also was super good. After that, of course, I checked into the hotel, which is where I got that cool little goodie bag that the front desk lady gave me. And then at that point, I just basically went straight to sleep. On Saturday morning, I woke up and immediately just started working on my Creator Conversations episode with Brian Jung. This was also before I moved to my new apartment, so at the time I just had terrible Wi-Fi at home, and I had saved most of the editing at least, and the upload for when I got some better Wi-Fi, which Marriott obviously gave me. But I was working on that for a few hours. I Grubhubbed some Chipotle over and used my Amex Gold credit because, like I said, at the time, living with my parents, Grubhub and Uber Eats was not something I was able to utilize much, so these trips actually are a place for me to easily utilize those credits on my Amex Gold card. And then after lunch, Chad joined me at the hotel for our Creator Conversations episode, and we filmed for a couple hours or so, something like that. But I just love hanging out with Chad. He's a great dude. Y'all need to go check out his channel if you haven't yet. And if you're not going to take my word for it, just listen to this next part. Chad had to get back home like really soon after we had filmed, and he also had to join Anthony Venture's live stream on the way home. But in the like extra 10 minutes that he had before that start of that live stream and his drive home, he was like, hey, let me take you around West Palm Beach. He knew the area very well, and we jumped in his Tesla and he literally took me wherever he wanted to. So that just speaks to his character there. He just wanted me to have a good time while I was in the area, and he even drove to me to do the interview, which is pretty awesome. So now definitely go check out Chad. Also, I did get to join in Anthony Venture's live stream with Chad for like 2 or 3 minutes before he dropped me off. So that was pretty fun as well. But after all the fun was done, I had to get back to work and try to get that Creator Conversations episode with Brian Jung up as fast as possible, but I ran into some editing errors. I literally sat there working on it for like 2+ hours, and I just could not figure out what was going wrong. And it was something with my export, and y'all might not even care about this, but it was just something that was really annoying me. So I ended up jumping on a Google Meet with Stan the Credit Frog, one of my buddies in the space, and we talked through it for another couple of hours or something. It felt like, at least. And finally, we were able to figure that out. So I was able to sleep well after that and prep the video in the morning. And that brings me to Sunday, of course, which the first thing I did was wake up and prep that video. Adding chapters to those 2-hour long videos is really tough. So hopefully y'all do enjoy me putting those in there. But after that video went live, I decided to actually relax a bit on this trip and drove to Palm Beach, not West Palm Beach, but actual Palm Beach. Parked the rental car on the side of the road and just went and sat on the beach and ate some breakfast and stuff. So that was pretty fun. Then I decided to take the scenic route in my Camaro, all the windows down, you know, the top sunroof was open and all that. And I drove along like the actual coast to CJ's neck of the woods. And before we actually met up, I decided to go and work in a coffee shop while he, you know, got ready for everything. Then I went and met him at his apartment. We went and grabbed Chipotle together across the street. And after we ate, we sat down to film our Creator Conversations episode at his apartment. I was super grateful that he let me into the place, and we had a ton of fun with it. I mean, me and CJ have been talking for so long, so I just really enjoyed getting to see him again in person. And the first time I saw both him and Chad in person was at the Las Vegas creator meetup thing we did a while back. You should go check out that episode too, because in that he tricked me into saying that I like the Amex Rose Gold card when I'm on Team Classic Gold, but y'all can have the debate between those two cards down below. After I filmed with CJ though, I headed straight to the airport, you know, turned in the rental car, everything went smoothly there. And then while I waited to board my flight, I got to have a good conversation with my stepbrother who was booking his flights for our trip to Croatia next year. So I was helping him through that while sitting in the terminal. I'm sure people loved me, but hey, had to get done. And then after that, I got on the plane, headed back home, and then had to drive about another hour to actually get to where I was going to be sleeping. So once again, like on the way there, didn't get to where I was going until 11 p.m. or later. But overall, super fun trip, and a ton of work was able to get done there. All the videos from that trip are now up. So if you now, you know, got the behind the scenes and want to see what I was actually talking about here, go check out those episodes. And if you do enjoy hearing about these redemptions that I've personally made in my actual life, be sure to go and click into this playlist next. Oh, also, I'm going to be doing a lot more regular live streams. So to get notifications for those, and also time-sensitive community post notifications, which YouTube does not give you either of, go follow me on this new app I'm using called Pushy, which of course is linked down below. I have no monetary relations with Pushy. I just really like their team and I believe in what they're doing. So definitely go check them out. And as always, I just really appreciate y'all watching this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.